Good evening and welcome to the final night of the first weekend of the 6th edition of the Lonavala International Film Festival. And we're all here paying a tribute to the cinema of Shakti Samanta. Here with me today are Madhav Todi, the festival director, Sushil Kumar Agarwal, the patron-in-chief, friends and colleagues and filmmakers Ashim Samanta and Jyotin Goel, music director Tushar Bhatia, RJ Divya Solgama, and my friend Pooja Desai, who's also Mr. Shami Kapoor's granddaughter. And since we have Chinatown today, we are delighted to take these little trivias from her that we never knew, which have never been published before. I will actually start where we ended off yesterday. We were talking how incredible it was for 2 days to have watched Evening in Paris and Kashmir Ki Kali. And it was incredible how wonderfully remastered they were by Ultra Video. It was actually quite incredible to see those colors and to see them without scratches and without anything and without it. Chinatown, if I am not mistaken, was in black and white. I saw it at the Radio Club when I was 3 years old or 5 years old, and I distinctly remember Tally Ho. I remember that till today. It's a memory I carry home with me. I will start this conversation by asking Ashim, what was the genesis of Chinatown? Why did he decide to make Chinatown? It sounds like a thriller. It was a thriller, but how did that happen?
Actually, Dad read a novel in which there was a sequence where one guy is just casually having his dinner at the restaurant, and some gangsters come and take him away. And then they come to know that this fellow is not the same guy who they were looking for. And there was another guy from the underworld who was the guy they were looking for. So from that, he got the idea and he made Chinatown. And from Chinatown, a Tamil producer bought the rights. And he made Chinatown in Tamil. Then Vijay Amritraj saw that Tamil movie and made Double Impact.
Okay.
With Van Damme in 1991, I think. Then you had Kali Charan, which was inspired from Chinatown, and Dawn, which was inspired from Chinatown. And Salim Javed, in fact, told Dad that Shakti ji, हमने Chinatown को मार के एकदम different कर दिया, आप देखिए जरूर. So that was the root of all these films.
Yes, Chinatown in that sense was a trailblazing movie. I would love to ask Divya what he thinks and what he feels about the music, because I've noticed, be it a great romantic film or be it a great thriller, or be it a breezy, happy movie like Evening in Paris, Shaktida's strength was giving all his films an outstanding music score. His music scores became the watchword, and each one of his scores was the hero of the film along with the hero of the film. This I've noticed continuously in all his films. Divya?
So Vivek, before we go to the music, I would like to say that, Shakti Samanta is majorly known for all this classic love stories, dramatic stories, musical, but he also had this fascination toward thrillers. Inspector, Howrah Bridge, Detective, Jali Note, and then again we can see, this one was there. Chinatown was, of course, the last one from that black and white era, and later on he revisited with The Great Gambler. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ashim, there was one film of Devanand which was shelled called as Interpol Agent from India, where Dev Saab, Madhubala, Helen and Kane Singh. I've seen a poster of that film. So that was a side of also Shakti Samanta ji. And music, of course, Ravi ji gave music for this one. And very, very interesting to see Ravi composing a song, Tonga song, and that is Humse Na Pucho Hum Kahan Chale, which is again, later on having that entire touch of old city of Kolkata. The entire Park Street is there. You can see Howrah Bridge out there. So that's the then of the main song, Bar Bar Dekho, the first of its kind for Shami Kapoor, the rock star, and Rafi Saab singing. And I want to talk about Shakila. This is a platform where I can talk on her eyes, yaar. What mesmerizing eyes she had. So इस song में all she is doing is looking at Shami Kapoor, जो हम भी अगर होते तो वही करते शायद उनके साथ साथ. And all those Anglo-Indian dancers are dancing. this बड़ा कातिल है मेरा यार चिन्ना चिन चिन चू, जिसके बीच में शमी कपूर full मुजरा कर रहे हैं, रफी साहब in full form, and that Yamma Yamma song where he just enters, Shami Kapoor enters with Ya Dil Ruba in the Turkish style, and Rafi Saab screaming on the top of his voice. So music was, it was different, but अगर आप फिल्म के साथ देखो तो it goes perfectly. बहुत perfect timing of the songs are very nicely placed in the film. और एक और बहुत कमाल की बात है, there's one more देखो जी बाला जोगी, that song is there where he's disguised as a jogi and in a train song तो ठीक है, लेकिन fun element is very high because you have young Kesto Mukherjee also doing some comic things and everything, and this film has basically a Tonga song as a train song, a club song, a car song. So it's like
every base was covered. So
there was this Ye Rang Na Chutega, which was a car song where both are like full romantic mood mein driving, and that, you know, that old, that 60s ka jo pura flavor hota tha, wo pura flavor us song mein aa jata hai.
Ashim, maybe Tushar also, why do you think he chose Ravi Saab? Because he used to work with O.P. Nayyar, he used to work with Shankar Jaikishan, and of course, post Aradhana, he used to work.
Ravi Saab happens to be our neighbor.
Oh.
So that's why he worked with Ravi Saab in Chinatown, and obviously neighbors, very close friends. But actually, Dad's style of music was slightly different from the style he gave.
Yeah.
That's why his was more like the Burman and the O.P. Nayyar.
Yes.
Because Dad's schooling, was in Dehradun. Schooling, college, everything was in Dehradun, and his principal was a British guy. So he was very influenced by the Western style, whereas Ravi uncle was more Indian. So I think he had to really work hard on the music of Chinatown.
Oh, he did. He did. I mean, you can never make out that Baar Baar Dekho is created by someone who's rooted in Indian tradition. And for those days, it was as modern and as trendy as it could get. Tushar, what do you have to say about the music?
I'll go a little away from that particular film. I'll go to the era. That 50s mein jo Nayyar Saab ne kiya na, after Aar Paar, if you see all the composers, I'm quoting Meena Mangeshkar ji here while I was working for HMVK, sab log apni jagah se heel gaye. Everybody was trying to do an O.P. Nayyar. They were asked to do O.P. Nayyar style of music, except for Naushad Sahab. Nobody was spared of doing that, including S.D. Burman in Pyasa Hum Aapki Aankhon Mein Is Dil Ko Basa Deta Hu, and I mean, each and every composer had that style going. It's very obvious that after the success of Howrah Bridge and those kind of club numbers, which was Nayyar Saab with Aar Paar, he was a master of club numbers. That whole influence, whether it was Vasant Desai, whether it was Jaidev ji, whether it was Roshan Saab, whether it was S.D. Burman, whether it was Shankar Jaikishan, everybody had to do that kind of music. Vasant Desai also, Sri Ramchandra also. So I'm quite sure in my mind, Ashim Bhai can correct me if I'm wrong, that what Shakti Da was looking for was, of course, Howrah Bridge and Jali Note kind of music. It's very apparent because the nightclub sequences and Helen and all those boss and car racing and all. So I feel Ravi Saab had a very nice example in Howrah Bridge and Jali Note to follow. And if I go a little back, then Aar Paar. All this starts with Bazi, I think. Guru Dutt Saab started this whole nightclub thing, Bazi and Taxi Driver. So Nayyar Saab was reigning supreme at that time. And I think Guru Chaudhary Ka Chand was the big hit, by the time this thing came. And Ravi Saab ne apna kafi naam kar diya tha. So Ravi Saab ne kya kiya कि जो नैयर के हुक्म के पत्ते थे, O.P. Nayyar, Asha Bhosle, Majru Sultanpuri. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear?
Can you hear? Yes, we can hear.
Yes.
So Ravi Saab generally used to work with Shakil Saab, etc. तो उन्होंने इसमें मजरू साहब के साथ काम किया, आशा जी और रफी साहब तो उनके साथ थे ही, बट उन्होंने बिल्कुल नैयर साहब के जो फेवरेट्स थे उनके साथ काम किया, and he created brilliant music. I think Chinatown music is really fabulous. So there is no doubt in that. Dil De Ke Dekho, if you see, was just around that time, and that Nayyar flavor was very much going around. So I feel that he was asked to compose like that because the theme demanded that, and he did a damn good job.
Fantastic. Dobby, you're here. Jyotin sir and Ashim have been friends ever since I knew one, I knew the other. And we've had a lot of fun in the past, dinners together and so on and so forth. So one of the reasons why I called Mr. Jyotin Goel here was that he's one person who must have known Shakti Da very well because his father was also a filmmaker. So I wanted to hear from you, what were your opinions of Shakti Da? Because all of us saw his movies while we were growing up. He was an influence on all of us. Maybe more so you because of your friendship with him or your relationship with him as a father figure. So I wanted to know from you, what were your thoughts on Shakti Samanta?
Before I get into that, let me just tell you what I think about where this stands in the pantheon. Chinatown stands in the pantheon of Shakti Das films. I think this is a very typical young man's film. He was what? Ashim, I think he must have been 34 when he started this film. I guess this film was started around 1960, right?
Yeah, 60.
Yeah. So he was 34 at that time, right?
Yeah, 35.
Yeah, absolutely. So really a young man's film, and you can see it's the whole approach is of a very young person, with Shammi Kapoor going falsetto in many of the songs, and the whole approach. I think Shakti Da discovered that Shammi Kapoor was his alter ego. That Shammi Kapoor was expressing what Shakti Da wanted to put forth on film. So if you notice, immediately after Chinatown, you have this trilogy happening. Chinatown, Kashmir Ki Kali, Evening in Paris, where the entire the whole thing is extremely young. The entire approach is young, breezy, young. So that, and as I started interacting with Ashim's dad a little later, and I saw a more mature version of him. So as he kind of matured, he probably, and Shammi Kapoor himself kind of started his physically changing in the sense that he was not able to express that kind of thing that Shakti Da wanted to express in his mature films. So the young, sensitive person. So which is why I think he gravitated towards Rajesh Khanna. But in these films, you have the archetypal Shammi Kapoor, and you can't take your eyes off Shammi Kapoor when he's on screen. Shammi Kapoor just blows everybody away. The only person probably in Chinatown whom he doesn't just smash off the screen is Helen. I think Helen is amazing in this film, and maybe the panelists may perhaps disagree with me. I think Helen is the true heroine of this film, because she has those changes of emotion and that character graph and the character growth, which Shakila doesn't have in the film. Shakila is your typical 50s heroine, where she, is worried that her father is going to, haath peele kar denge, and she has this thing about Dedi, ye aap kya kar rahe hain? That Dedi thing was very 50s. But as far as Helen is concerned, she is amazing, and she brought a completely different vibe to women of that era. It's completely different from your regular film heroine. This kind of genre, as far as this Chinatown is concerned, and many of Shakti Das films of that era, was typical film noir. So you have this kind of this German expressionist photography, Dwarka Divecha at his best, with shadows and lighting, contrasting lighting. You have marvelous editing. You have, in fact, Ashim and I were discussing this at one time. His father's penchant for sharp cuts. Now, sharp cuts was something which is completely unusual in the 50s. This was a much later development in Hindi films. But just see the cutting in Chinatown. So I think the heroine, the kind of atmosphere. Again, look at the exotic locations that Shakti Da picks at that time. He goes from Hill Station to Singapore to Habra Bridge to Chinatown to Kashmir Ki Kali to Evening in Paris. So it's that kind of graph, young man. develops. Sorry, say again. Say what?
Out to them in the first on opening night that even the names of the films were named after cities and countries. So we had
Exactly.
Singapore, Howrah Bridge, and Chinatown, Evening in
Yes.
Paris, and Kashmiri Kali.
This is, a very young director kind of expresses himself on film. His innermost thoughts. A good director, and that was absolutely outstanding. So that was Shammi Kapoor was a projection of Shakti Da, in my opinion.
Wonderful, wonderful.
I think you're right, because even in later days, Pagla Kahin Ka, Jani Anjane, Preetam, there was a whole bunch of films that he was doing with Shammi Kapoor even while he was working with Rajesh Khanna.
Absolutely.
He was working with Shammi Kapoor and Shankar Jaikishan on those, and he was working with R.D. Burman on those. But those are discussions for next week when we get into the Rajesh Khanna. And to come to my original question, Jyotin, what did you think of Shakti Da as a person? You must have met him, interacted with him, talked to him.
He was a absolutely towering personality. He was known in the film industry for his integrity. If anybody wanted, absolutely, if there was any dispute anywhere, the first person that was approached was Shakti Da. And Shakti Da, the moment he came up with the decision, that was it. No one disputed Shakti Da's decision. There were people who were probably veterans of the era, the earlier era, and had a standing of maybe more years than Shakti Da did. But Shakti Da was, in the film industry's opinion, the last word as far as any matter that came up for dispute is concerned. At home, he was a complete, he was at home. He was so friendly. I in fact in 1973 went with Ashim and his family, that is Shakti Da and the entire family, to Kashmir. And we spent some time. I was the hanger-on. We were of course teenagers at that time. And
lucky you.
Shakti Da, Ashim, were you shooting a film at that time?
No, we were not shooting. We just gone for
we just just a holiday, exactly, because our dads were either shooting a film in Kashmir or we were holidaying in Kashmir. So we went on this particular holiday, and my dad had given me some money that don't allow Shakti Da to spend for you. So every time I pulled out my wad of notes, Shakti Da used to give me such a dirty look. I used to quail and stuff it back in. It was great fun. We had lovely times together. And Shakti Da was, of course, this after my father and my uncle Bridge, the third person in my life, a senior figure, a mentor, was Shakti Da.
Thanks. This was really good to hear. Pooja, on your grandfather and Chinatown. Had you seen Chinatown before yesterday, or?
Yeah, I had as a kid. I was introduced to my grandfather's films essentially with the songs. We had this one VHS which said Dadu songs that he had made for one of my cousins, and we used to watch that, and that's how we started watching his films, because we liked his songs. And so I had seen Chinatown, but I saw it last night again. And it seemed so fresh to me, so relevant even now. Like, I enjoyed it. Like, I was actually LOLing, as people would say. I was laughing out aloud because the capers were so funny. And, but what struck me the most was that he played an anti-hero as well, which was the second character, which was very unusual because there was a lot of darkness in that role, which I don't think he normally portrayed or went there. But I think with this film, it was a really dark character. It wasn't like a somewhat gray character. It was really, really, tortured, soul. And there was a lot of, as mentioned earlier, a lot of noir in the film, a lot of, like right from those, hidden passageways to, it had that flavor of Maltese Falcon or, one of those films. So it was very fresh for me to watch that whole. It was a side of my grandfather's I haven't seen.
In fact, interesting that you mentioned noir, because the climax when they go through the tunnel in the water, that's very reminiscent of The Third Man.
Yeah, and it's been taken forward so many times, that similar climax in so many Hollywood films as well. Like, you see so many of them right now. So, it was so, like, it didn't seem dated. Like, it was so like relevant even today. So
No, actually, I was noticing one thing. None of the films seemed dated.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
look at Sharmila Tagore was wearing in Evening in Paris, even though the film is 50 years old or more, she looked as contemporary as she would look if she'd been dressed for a film today. It's quite incredible how relevant and how everything has gone into the cycle. And I wanted to ask you one thing, Ashim. In our days, we used to watch foreign films on VCD. We had this video player, then there was this laser disc player, then of course we had CDs, then we had DVDs. Now we have 5,000, 8,000 films in one little hard disk. But in your father's day, except for the cinema where they had to go to see movies, they were not able to have access to movies the way we did. How then did filmmakers like Shakti Da or even your father, Devendra Goel Sahab, how did they manage to watch world cinema?
They could only watch them when they released in India.
Actually,
Cinema halls.
Cinemas hall. But
And every now and then there was a film festival. So they used to watch. They used to make sure that they were there every night for all shows. I mean, every day for all shows. You know?
So I remember, Viveck, my grandfather used to tell me that there was something called as Film Forum, which used to be near the Chopati area. There was this club, and they used to have every Friday and Saturday screenings of world cinema films and everything. So they used to go there to watch all these films.
You're right. I remember this.
I'll tell you where. It used to be a place called the Tarabai Hall, which was behind the old Marine Lines railway station. The old Marine Lines railway station was at G Road, where I used to live. At front of G Road was Govind Mahal, where I was born. But then they shifted the Marine Line station to going a little further. But in that little lane there, there was this place called Tarabai Hall. And Sundays at 6 in the evening, they would actually show Hollywood movies of a certain educational sort. They had to have some reason, some educational reason for showing those films for a ticket worth 50 Naya paise. So you paid your 50p and you'd go and see world cinema. And there were little pockets of those, but there was no way you could see them at home. And
I have a couple of brochures. I think I'll have to search it out. I have a couple of those festival brochures, which he had gifted it to me, so which had all these screening names.
They travel. They go to Cannes and other film festivals to watch.
Yes, my father went to a couple of festivals, and on every visit, he used to pick up a massive amount of reference books, film books, books connected with world cinema. So we have this huge library. I think it must be worth quite a lot. Perhaps I should, Viveck, if you're really good to me, I'll probably leave it to you in my will.
So me also.
Actually, those days they didn't have much reference to films. But my father, for example, read a lot of novels. He read Sharat Chandra 10 times. Every novel of his he read 10 times. And he also read some of these foreign novels, detective novels, etc., like Chase and some others. From one of those, he got the idea of Chinatown also. So basically,
and we know that Chinatown would spawn Double Impact and Kali Chand. In fact, now that I think of it, there are shades of Chinatown even in Great Gambler.
Yep.
Yes, there is slight. Yes.
It's not Chinatown by any standards. But again,
in fact, Viveck, one interesting thing about Shaktida's oeuvre is the amount of films dealing with double roles.
Yes.
If you take a look at from Chinatown to Evening in Paris, Aradhana, I think Ashim's own film Amne Samne, Gitanjali, all double roles. I don't think any other filmmaker has made 5 films or 6 films with double roles.
Yeah, Gitanjali.
8 films, in fact.
8 films. Look at that.
Aankhon mein tum ho, then
Gitanjali had double role.
Gitanjali, double role.
Gitanjali was double role.
A serial I made.
8 films with double roles.
Kal Chakra, that also had double roles. So.
Wow, look at that.
Was Jani and Jani also?
I think they were saving. They were not wanting to sign another actor.
Jani and Jani didn't have double role.
Okay, Madhavji, any questions for us from the audience today?
I think
We do
people
have
should try to spot Shetty in this film because he played a Chinese villain. That's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
This is
interesting.
really good.
He's so good.
Chingy.
He's very good.
Yeah.
Actually,
amazing.
he had hair before Chinatown, and dad told him to shave off, and that hair never grew back. But he was terrific in the film.
He was amazing. He was
Yeah,
absolutely
he
is
amazing.
terrific.
He's completely believable.
I also wanted to ask you, in that particular era of Chinatown, I remember there was a film called a little later, Hamsaya had Mala Sinha playing a Chinese spy.
Yes.
And Dev Saab's Prem Pujari was about the war with China. And there was a lot
Madanpuri
of,
again.
yes, and a lot of Chinese influence for some reason on our cinema. And
don't forget
coincidentally,
Aankhein. Goel
Yeah.
is sitting here.
And the great Hakikat.
when the great,
Aankhein, Hakikat.
you know, so there were
Lalkar.
two of fighting China with one character playing especially Mala Sinha. For some reason, she played that Chinese character more than other people. But I must tell you that this happened again. This happened again 5 years ago or 4 years ago when I saw a film called Rangoon. And then there was another film based on our incursions in China and Burma, which was, I can't remember the name, but I saw it in Guwahati. And then there was a Salman Khan film called Tube Light again, which was about China. And suddenly we had this Tube Light.
Vivek, do you remember Lahu Ke Do Rang?
Of course, I know. There was Helen
Danny.
played
Vinod Khanna and Danny.
Khanna and Danny, and Helen played the mother.
Exactly.
One mother, so Danny's mother, you know. And
Danny's mother. Exactly.
And the entire getup of Ranjit in the climax.
that was quite incredible. But all these films, again, I must tell you, had great music. Except this new lot of Chinese films that we saw and forgot in 2015. Soonest forgotten, better mended, as I always say. Because I don't understand why we, at that point, for some reason, suddenly there was Rangoon, which he tried to make Casablanca, and he set the Burmese thing. And there was this one other film, and I'm not remembering the name, and it was made by Tigmanshu Dhulia, if I'm not mistaken. And it was about the whole Burmese thing and Subhash Chandra Bose disappearing. And then somebody else made the Subhash Chandra Bose thing. And then there was Tube Light. And then there were, so suddenly we had this Chinese orgasm, as I call it. And then it quietly died because none of the films really worked. Neither on the music level, neither on the cinematic level, neither on the story level. But when they were made then, so, I mean, I don't even want to compare. I just want to enjoy the flavor of what we are doing. I want to enjoy the films that we've been watching for the last 3 days. And I am actually today being a Sunday and I have just one webinar, but I will finish off. And so let's hope.
Vivek, may I just quickly put in a question because we're running out of time. I'm sorry. I'm actually, doing the most evil thing in the world, I think, by telling you to stop talking to the great panelists. But I must ask this question, which we've got to Ashim ji. Ashim ji, we know that Shaktida has worked with a lot of artists, including parallelly with Shami ji, with Rajesh Khanna ji, etc. Would you be able to identify, like we talked that, Shami ji was perhaps his alter ego. Would you be able to identify as to who was or which one of them could be closer to Shaktida as compared to the others? Whilst I'm not trying to draw a comparison, but there's
Shami uncle was very, very close to him.
Okay.
Extremely close friend. In fact, you see, what happened is dad was going through a low phase in his life with, Naughty Boy was being made with Madhubala and Kishore Kumar. After 10 reels were ready, Madhubala was told by the doctors not to work a single day. And he had to abandon a 10-reel complete film. And that's when he was shooting for Singapore. And he would, suddenly think of Naughty Boy and his losses, and he would go like, he would be lost. And Shami uncle asked him one day, Shaki, what's wrong with you? Why do I see you sometimes just looking very down? He says, yeah, Shami, this is what has happened, and I don't know how I'm going to get out of this financial loss. So he told dad that, listen, right now my market is good. You start a movie with me, and I won't take any money. You pay me at the end of the movie. And that's how Chinatown was made. So, and after that, And when Chinatown got completed, he had still to pay some amount, and Shami uncle allowed it. He said, okay, you can pay me after 1 or 2 weeks of the release. And Dad, after 7 days, took the money, the balance money, to his house. And Shami uncle received the money, and then he said, 1 minute. No, he didn't take the money. He said, what did you bring? So he said, I brought your balance money. He said, wait here, I'll just come. He went inside, and after 10-15 minutes, he came out. So Dad asked him, what happened? He said, yaar, mera wo dost hai. He was a very big hero at that time. वो उसने मुझे बोला था कि तुझे पैसे मिल गए चाइनाटाउन के? So he said, नहीं, 20% बाकी हैं और नहीं मिलेंगे, भूल जा. So नहीं, शक्ति मेरा दोस्त है, वो जरूर दे देगा. So I went to tell him that मेरे दोस्त तेरे दोस्त जैसे नहीं है, तो पैसे लेके आए.
Wow.
That's a great insight. That's a great insight.
Superb.
Great men, great times. Thank you very much, Viveck. Please allow me to end the panel discussion today, and we will see everybody next week. Thank you, Ashim ji. Thank you, Pooja ji. Thank you, Viveck. Thank you, Tushar. Thank you, Divya ji. Sushil ji, thank you very much for everything, and please enjoy the movie, and see you next Friday.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah, great pleasure.
Jyotin ji, I forgot to thank you. I'm so sorry. My apologies. Thank you very much for being on our
I
panel.
just struck you off my will.
I'm so sorry. I better late than never.
Don't hesitate. Come every week. Audiences love watching people like us who love movies, talking about the movies the way we do. We are striking a chord. People are suddenly seeing a not dehumanized kind of cinema. They're seeing real people who laughed, who cried, who suffered, who lost money, who made money, who had friendships. And through these conversations, I think in some way, we are actually preserving and enhancing the heritage that was left to us, Dobby by your father, Ashim by your father, Pooja by your grandfathers, both of them. And I think I am privileged and honored that we are able to do this. Thank you, everyone, and see you next week.